has been a topless protest in Argentina regarding the issue of whether or not it's acceptable or legal to sunbathe topless in Buenos Aires. Now, apparently a judge has already ruled that it is not criminal behavior if someone decides to sunbathe topless. It's not that big of a deal, let's all move on with our lives. But apparently there were beachgoers at this one particular beach who were uncomfortable when a few females were sunbathing topless. So they called the cops, and then there was an overreaction to it, okay? So police actually cited a National Criminal Code article prohibiting, quote, obscene displays to justify asking the women to leave the beach, although at least one judge ruled after the incident that going topless was not a crime. Not a crime. Now, sunbathing topless is apparently not as common in Argentina as it is in, let's say, Spain. Right. So maybe some people were caught off guard. Maybe it did make them feel a little uncomfortable. But again, it's not obscene for a woman to bare her breasts. That's like the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard, right? Anyway, so the trio refused to put on their bikini tops when approached by officers at this beach, Necochea, the Atlantic coastal resort in Buenos Aires. One even whipped her top off when being warned about their behavior. Now, finally, at one point, the cops threatened to arrest them, handcuff them and arrest them, and that was when they finally complied. But this actually led to a lot of outrage in the country, and so women are now protesting. And that includes people who are protesting topless and people who are completely clothed. But I think what's interesting about this is, at one stage, about 20 police officers in 6 patrol cars arrived, which is absurd. And so that kind of police reaction would make it seem as though this was an insane crime and we need to do something about it immediately. But apparently there's a huge issue in Argentina involving violence against women. Yes. Recently, a 16-year-old girl was killed. She was drugged and murdered. And if you look at the statistics, a woman is murdered in Argentina every 30 hours. Yep. So it's a big problem that women in the country feel is going unchecked, and there's not enough of a response. And to see a police reaction to something as frivolous as women sunbathing topless, it shows a stark contrast between the priorities.
There's a huge issue of gender inequality in Argentina. I was on the show, I believe, when we reported on the story of the 16-year-old raped, brutally killed, and it caused what was called Black Wednesday, which was the protest that went throughout the world. There was a lot of people standing with it. And in 2016 alone, 275 gender-related murders had happened in the first 5 months in Argentina. So it's a prominent issue. And this is another example, although at a glance you're like, well, they just wanted to show off their breasts. It's just a minor issue, but it's just another representation of the overwhelming issue, which is women are not treated fairly in Argentina. It's a cultural issue, right? And what it reminds me of is when we're looking at such things as a women's march, right? And then you get those that will respond. What rights do you not have? Like, if we're not moved on from this, what rights do you not have? Like the Piers Morgans of the world, who I despise, who comes out and says things like, they don't even know what they're protesting, as if like the only reason women across the world was protesting was because Donald Trump. He would love to think that. He was a reason behind it, because he stands for a medieval outlook on women being gagged that a lot of people stand for. No, but it's an ideology that still plagues a lot of nations like Argentina. There might be laws put in place to adjust. There's now laws put in place to make sure that it's called for what it is. It's a gender-related murder, meaning the punishment is more severe. And that can try to strip this back and try to help this issue, but it's still an ideology that's prominent there. Yeah. When women can't go topless, even though it's written in law, it still means that too many people just undermine women in that country.
Isn't that where the 2 Australian tourist women that were killed when they went back to the guys? They went back with the guys and they blamed the women for going back to the house with the guys and partying with them.
I don't know if I'm familiar with that story.
It was somebody in my comedy community actually knew somebody connected to that. But you know what? And it's funny that we target Argentina, but it's just a world issue. That women are dealing with inequality and machismo. As a Latina woman, I have been, subject to this. In Miami, you can go topless on the beach, and there are people from all over,
I mean, in Miami, you can wear like a string, and you're good. You're good. But I like that you brought that up, because it just shows how norms play such a huge role in what does and doesn't make us uncomfortable. So in Spain, everyone's sunbathing topless, right? And so when I went to Barcelona a few years ago, I was like, awesome. So I took off my top and no one made me feel uncomfortable, and it felt so normal and fine. But if you were to do that, even at like a nudist beach here in California, you'd still feel a little uncomfortable because it's like a specially designated place where it's okay to bare the human body. You know?
It's only allowed when they're paying for it in a magazine, right? Because, and again, it's true, and that's what the police officers were. A lot of people ended up turning up to the march and were like just gawking at women, and then they were told to leave. Because it's such an interesting concept that I feel like men feel that they are emasculated because they can look at the woman's breast. Now they're forced to look at women's breast and they can't do anything about it, right? When it's a ridiculous ideology that is still plaguing a lot of places, because women doing this, they see it as an act of defiance. And that is a power push. It's like, oh no, they're trying to gain a couple of yards. Well, we're going to make sure that even if the law doesn't say it, we're going to make them feel uncomfortable. Because even if they didn't find a way to move them, they would still be they would already be like disrupted. They'd already caused a problem there by going up to them and saying to them, you're not allowed to do this here. And that's where it starts to get frustrating, because small issues like this will end up, it's got a domino effect. It will move forward to women just trying to do simple everyday things without feeling undermined by people. And I know you mentioned that it is a worldwide issue, which it is, and we have to focus on it. But it's ironic that a lot of people who were in response to the Women's March were like, well, what about, you're not protesting Saudi Arabia, and look what they do to women, as if like the Women's March as a whole had a specific cause. No, it was set to enlighten the world that there's a lot of problems still going on, and there's a lot of issues that still undermine women.
And some women protested in the Middle East.
Yeah, and by the way, maybe it makes sense to protest out of fear that, you know, women's rights would roll back to the craziness that you experience. It's like, you know what I mean? Like I had someone on Facebook make that same argument. Well, you're allowed to be an American who's concerned about America regressing, okay? And so there were women there women and men, by the way, it wasn't just a women's march.
Lots of men.
There were individuals there of all backgrounds who had various issues that they felt needed to be voiced.
Absolutely.
And that's what that protest was about. It was not just about women's rights, it was about a host of issues that Americans are fearful now that we have entered a different age in America. So that's something to keep in mind. And by the way, the political activism that we're seeing here in the United States, in Argentina, in France, I love it. People are standing up. They're speaking truth to power. I hope that people continue to do it in a peaceful way, and we actually get things done. Now more than ever, I feel like people are engaged in politics.
Absolutely.
And that's certainly the silver lining to all the negative stuff that's happening around the world.
There was a fantastic protest in Glasgow, Scotland against Donald Trump with some of the best signs that you've ever seen. There were signs that some of my friends made that ended up like BuzzFeed ran them and said the Scottish have a way with words, the way we were using our own slang to insult Donald Trump so much. And I was actually on Twitter translating them for Americans.
I love that.
I get it all the time, though. People are always asking me, with regards to the march, like, what were you guys marching for?
Did you have enough? You can't fit it in 140 characters.
No, and I'm like, this is just a symptom of a greater issue. And women, some people think that's protesting to be topless is silly, but it really is just somebody's way of saying we're tired, we're frustrated, we don't get paid as much, we are abused, we are sexually assaulted, and there aren't consequences, you know? And so if you think this is silly, then find something that's not silly to you and go find your way to make a difference and speak out against this stuff.
Exactly.
We are the watchers on the wall. We are the sword in the darkness. Come join us. tytnetwork.com/join.